Hi, you're listening to Photofocus. This is the September 5th edition, and this is Rich Harrington coming to you actually from Photoshop World. And joining me this week is my co-host, Scott Bourne. Scott?
I think you meant to say live from Las Vegas and Photoshop World. It's the Photofocus edition of the Photoshop World podcast.
Yes, one of us does that oh so well, and that would be you. Yes, we are actually in the same room, if you can't tell, which is awesome, and we are together at Photoshop World, which is just getting ready to get underway. So we're going to be bringing you a whole bunch of stuff from Photoshop World. We've got live interviews that we're going to be doing with some of the speakers. There'll be lots of industry news, but it is that time, and I think since it's Photoshop, Scott, we will focus first on some of the great things Adobe's been up to. So you've been digging deep into Camera Raw. What are some of the things that really you like?
I do want to mention one technical note first, that we did have dead interviews scheduled, but the dead people we were going to interview were not cooperating, so we're only going to do live interviews.
Yes.
Okay. So just so you know.
The dead people also smelled bad.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think that I have hit this sort of crazy point in my post-processing that I never really thought I would. I went through this migration where I used to use Photoshop for everything. Then Aperture came out, and I used Aperture mostly, and then some Photoshop. And then I switched to Lightroom 4 because I found that the RAW conversion in Adobe Camera Raw was so much better than Apertures. And it wasn't like I just sort of felt like it was better. I went through, because I was about to give up 6 years of my life that I invested in Aperture and 400,000 images in it. I went through line by line and tested each feature.
The magic of the clarity slider.
The clarity slider.
The clarity slider.
The clarity slider. You know what the clarity slider's like? The clarity slider's like
sex.
It's like that girl you meet that makes you forget every other girl you ever have met. And you think clarity slider morning, noon, and night. You see a menu and you think clarity slider.
I'm looking at the camera. I'm looking at the shot. Last night we were shooting beautiful view of Las Vegas together. I'm taking long 3-second exposures, beautiful skyline, nice twinkles. I'm like, this is going to look really good with some clarity.
There you go. Well, the thing is, this is what I was getting to. Now, this is really weird for me to say this, but I now do 95% of my post in Adobe Camera Raw. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I do 95% of my post in Lightroom. I'm saying I do 95% of my post-production in Adobe Camera Raw. Because A, I'm an old enough guy to have had to get things right in the camera most of my life, so it's pretty close to begin with. And B, they just got all that cool stuff in there. And the things that you used to have to go through to do in Photoshop or Aperture or something else, whatever you use, it's right in there.
Yeah, it's great. You've got the ability to tackle shadows and highlights in there that a lot of people miss. You can go in over to the curves tab and do a curves adjustment, much nicer than levels. It's just great, and then you got noise reduction. So yeah, if you look at it from a pure photographic workflow, there's times I'm doing compositing tasks or collages or merging multiple shots together for a panoramic. But you're right, with a pure raw workflow, you should be getting at least 75% of the way there in Camera Raw. Now, your case, the pictures are coming out solid to begin with, but you're right, all the controls are there. And the thing with Camera Raw is it really is the same controls when you're in Lightroom. It's just accessing the raw engine. But yeah, you could do that from Photoshop, you could do that from Lightroom. Even for those who are budget conscious and think, oh, those are just too expensive for me, suck it up. Photoshop Elements has Camera Raw in it. It's not this
$9 or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really reasonable. I mean, put it this way: my mom uses Photoshop Elements.
Okay,
she even bought it.
I think the thing is, for me, is like I use Adobe Camera Raw, and then I do move into Lightroom for the presets. And one of the things I really like about my decision to switch between Aperture and Lightroom is that while I loved Aperture, it never had the uptake, nor did it have the opportunity to have the uptake of Lightroom because it only ran on Apple machines. And then, of course, people on Windows machines could run Lightroom. So there's a much bigger community of support. And I found like 1,293,408 free preset sites. So I now have 7 hard drives full of Lightroom presets, and I just play with them all day long. That's actually become a little more time consuming. Everyone's saying, are you saving time in Lightroom? Well, no, actually it's not so much because I'm playing with all the presets. But once I get my favorites set aside, I do my stuff in ACR. I move into a few of the presets. I might come in with a plugin like Nick to do some sharpening or some noise reduction if I can't get where I want to go, or I might do some HDR. But it's like 2 minutes and out. For me, the rule has always been, and if people listen to the show carefully, they know I've been saying this for years. My rule in my shop is you get 2 minutes in post. At 2 minutes and 1 second, we're off that picture onto the next one because
I'm using a Nikon D800, so I need 3 minutes because the files are so big.
It takes 8 minutes for yours to load, so it's unfortunately for you. But I mean, just saying that Adobe Camera Raw has allowed me to streamline the process, and the great thing is it now I don't know how you're more attached to this Adobe community than I am. How far along does someone have to be in the Photoshop world to be able to use the current Adobe Camera Raw? Because I know that you get ACR updates for free once you're using Photoshop. So, like, can people who use CS5 use the current Camera Raw?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. This is one of those things where it kind of came out, and I'm pretty certain that CS5 and CS6 use the same RAW. And so, but however, CS6 will have certain camera updates that only work with CS6. I mean, one of the things, and I think this is reasonable, is that Adobe doesn't want to say, oh, we have tested this version of RAW works with Photoshop. They're only going to test for the current version. So if you bought a camera that came out after CS6 was shipping, you may need to make sure you're using CS6 if you want to use the RAW. Or there is a good workaround. It's an extra step, but you can use the DNG converter to go ahead and wrap those RAW files as DNGs and stuff the RAWs inside.
Well, the thing I also want to point out is that coming from the Aperture community, we waited a long time for the camera update.
I had a Leica that took them a year and a half to add support for. I'm like,
now
really?
I'm going to say this. I'm not going to necessarily blame Apple for that, because I happen to have evidence of a certain company, at least at one time, and I won't say who they are, but their initials are Nikon, and they didn't play well with others when it came to their SDK, and they just flat out wouldn't give it to Apple because they wanted.
There was a time period there when they were trying to drive everybody to their developing application that they did with Nick.
That Nick does for them that you have to pay for. So the SDK, keep in mind, and also regards your DNG comment, most of our audience probably do not know this, is that you're getting some subset of the original RAW file when you switch to DNG. And you know what that subset is? It's as much as the manufacturer chose to give Adobe through the SDK to convert to DNG. You're not, if there's 100 points of information in your Canon file or your Nikon file or your Olympus RAW file, and you're converting to DNG, you might be converting 91 of those points or 86 of those points.
Except they're the points that typically matter.
They are, but there are reasons. This is a valid reason to not switch to DNG.
Yeah, I want the Olympus feature that does the auto face detection on my cat.
Yeah, well, there are features that do matter, actually. And I'll tell you, that's my only argument against DNG, but I think that
I just use it as a workaround.
Yeah, it is a workaround. But my main point was that the updates apparently, we both know that Apple isn't necessarily the easiest company to work with. Some of the folks may have just decided, okay, we'll screw you. We'll give you updates once a year because you're kind of not easy to deal with, and we'll give Adobe updates more often. So I see the ACR updates much more often.
I could tell you why that is. And this is, I'm going to protect myself here and say this is an opinion, not a fact. This is an opinion based on a lot of experience, but this is still an opinion. Okay. But I have had the advantage of having access from different software companies at different points of time. And what I mean by that is that some companies contact me a year, 2 years before the product is shipping and say, give us input. And they take the same approach with a lot of their manufacturers, giving them early access. Other companies treat everything as a giant secret.
That would be Apple.
I didn't say it.
I said it.
Yeah. And as such, manufacturers can't necessarily keep up with them. So while I like certain products being a secret, I don't like the products that I use professionally to be a secret.
And the new CEO, Tim Cook, said we're going to double down on secrecy. He bragged about it. which means those of us who do this for a living, it's very hard to make plans and know what it is we're supposed to be thinking about because we can't do it. And that is the reason why I switched to Lightroom and abandoned a 6-year history with Aperture.
Well, your new love of a camera, is it supported by Aperture yet?
Yeah. Yeah, but it was supported quicker in ACR. And that's not the reason to switch, but I'm just saying there are a number of things that came to me as I did the switch. I noticed the updates came faster, and I noticed that being able to work within the Adobe ecosystem from start to finish, like taking smart objects from Lightroom to Photoshop to Premiere Pro, etc. That's all so much easier now than having to simply send things out to Adobe and round trip them back to Aperture and then make them into a TIFF and then put them back into Premiere Pro. And so it did save me some other steps.
I really
right
like
there.
that. I can keep things as a raw object and then as a smart object and then move into Photoshop and adjust.
And we should mention for our audience that doesn't know the significance of that, why that matters. And it is that, let's say that you use a photo that you've worked through Lightroom and Photoshop and eventually gets dropped into, let's say, a Premiere Pro video as a still. And let's say later on you were looking at that photo and you realized, I kind of crushed the blacks a little bit. I better go back.
You don't have to start all over.
You don't have to start all over because as soon as you go back and do that one place, it's done everywhere that photo appears.
If I'm in Premiere Pro and I hit Command or Control E for Edit Original, I'm back in Photoshop. Okay. I double click on the layer, I'm back in Camera Raw. Close, save, propagate, resolve.
Yeah, propagation's illegal in Utah, just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
we have a live studio audience today. She's from Utah, and she's trying really hard not to laugh at the Utah joke. And for our 5 listeners in Utah, Scott can be located at the following address.
Anyway, the smart object deal was something that I didn't have experience with when I was working in the Aperture. I mean, I literally, as a fairly high-level user, when people were talking about smart objects, I was always walking around going, what the hell are smart objects?
Well, and here's the thing. A lot of our customers, even if they are using Adobe, aren't using smart objects. At the bottom of the Camera Raw dialog box, there's this little blue hypertext, and you click it, and it comes up with some settings like, do you want to downsample or upsample the image when opening? What's the target sharpening method? Is it for the screen? Is it for print? And in there is a box that says open as a smart object. So if you do that, when you click open and it sends it to Photoshop, it keeps it as a smart object. The other way around that is to use the file place command in Photoshop. It does the same thing. Now, there are a couple of drawbacks. Some of those old, archaic, hey, I want it to be a cheesy paintbrush effect filters won't work. There's like 3 crappy adjustments like, oh, I want to use the variations command because I don't know what I'm doing. So show me 15 different options and I'll just click on the one I want until it looks right.
Use variations?
They shouldn't. Yes. I'm sorry. Like, learn how to use levels, learn how to use curves.
In Utah either, by the way.
Yes. Those aren't legal either. So that was a dirty look.
Now, before we move on, I got a question for you that I want to get to, but I do need to take just a moment to say thanks, SmugMug. SmugMug Pro is a place that you can sell your photographs as well as host them and as well your video. There has been a price increase at SmugMug recently, but there are 2 levels that are unchanged. So if you don't want to move up to the higher levels, you don't have to. Go to smugmug.com for more information. Also want to thank our friends over at Kelby Training. There's a special code. If you go to any post on Photofocus, at the bottom of the post, you'll see an RSS ad, and you'll see a special code that you can click and get like $20 off a whole year of Kelby Training. And you can see Rich right there at Kelby training something.
Yep, I have some classes there on video that are there.
So thanks to both of them for sponsoring Photofocus, both the podcast and the website, which, by the way, is open 365 days a year at photofocus.com. It's free. You don't need to sign in for anything. You don't need to give your email, your credit card number. It's always free and always will be as long as I'm a part of it. And thanks for everybody for visiting.
Now, last night, we did some time-lapse shooting.
Yes, we did.
And we had a chance to pull out some new equipment that we've talked about on past episodes, but we put it together to use. And I think the results are pretty cool. So I want to walk people through that workflow and a couple of lessons learned. So the first thing, obviously, we novel idea, as we've said on past shows, we did a location scout and found a beautiful view. We didn't agree which angle was better, but you acquiesced and let me choose last night. You were a very good host. And we got up there, and we had the giant reflective glass. And this was totally your discovery. And the folks over at LensSkirt should love us. We had 3 of them up on one shoot. I started tweeting last night, like, what's that? What's that? So LensSkirt, if you're listening, you should sponsor us. Love the product. But basically, other than the person on Twitter said, I thought you said you were wearing a skirt. Why don't you tell us what the LensSkirt does?
Well, if you've ever tried to shoot through glass, and everybody that comes to Vegas and gets their hotel room with a nice view of the strip or whatever wants to do at least a photograph and maybe a time lapse, you see these reflections in the glass. And no matter how many of your lights you turn off or you use the old trick like of wearing all black, there's still a reflection that you see in the photo. And
there's just something weird about having you and a bunch of friends in a hotel room wearing all black with the lights off, tripping over your photography equipment.
Yeah. Unless you're wearing that special black that works with like a black light. But anyway, the LensSkirt is like a hood that goes over the lens and with 4 little suction cups attaches itself to the glass, completely blacking everything out. And it gives you the test results were just phenomenal. I mean, some of the cleanest time lapses I've ever shot through glass as a result of just being able to completely black things out. And we went up to the top of my condo, the 37th floor, which happens to overlook
the Bellagio fountain
and the Cosmo and the Strip, and so we had a great vantage point. And yes, for 1995, I'll take you up there too. I was not just kidding. But we, like Rich said, we scouted. We went up first. We walked around the pool deck, which is also on the 37th floor. We didn't see the angle we wanted. We went to the other side, found that we had a better view through this area, common area here at my condo at City Center, that allowed us to take a nice view looking north on the Strip. And we all 3, Pam was with us, you, Rich, me, myself, we all had tripods. We all had our cameras at various angles. We all used our LensSkirts, and we all fired away time-lapse. Now, the Nikon has a built-in intervalometer.
Yep, and for those of you who have a Nikon, almost everyone has this. You'll see it. It's going to be called the shooting timer or the interval timer, and it allows you to go ahead and dial in. Now, you're limited to 999 shots, but if you think about that from a practical point of view, that's easily a 30 or a 60-second time lapse, and the only person who wants to watch a 2-minute time lapse is you. Even if people think it's cool, they're like, after about 10, 15 seconds, like, oh, that's pretty, and then they want to see the next one.
Yeah. And I used IO Shutter, which I've recently written about at Photofocus, and I'm going to test the Android equivalent after Photoshop World. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit busy this week, so I won't be able to get to that until then. But I used IO Shutter to trip my time lapses. It worked well, and the results were great. And Rich, we were experimenting, and I know that a lot of our audience probably uses simpler methods to get their time lapse, but convinced me that you want to do your time lapse in Adobe Premiere Pro, because
actually After Effects. Yes, it's the cousin of Premiere Pro. Yeah, it tied together. Yeah, they look almost the same because one's the motion graphics app, the other's the video editing app. You get them the same suite. They come with Production Premium or Master Collection or Creative Cloud. And when you look at After Effects, this is the most intimidating piece of software.
It is. Will tell you, it scares the crap out of me. In fact, after we record this show, I'm going to make Rich do the whole thing for me, and I'm going to record it on my iPhone video so that I can watch every step. It is not an easy learning curve, but if you invest the time in it, and we will be posting at photofocus.com some videos, some screencasts about this.
The basics take about a half hour to an hour to learn.
But once you see the time lapse, it's like, oh my gosh, it's the time that you first saw the difference between an iPhone picture and a 5D Mark II picture. It's dramatically clearer. You can do all kinds of cool effects, streaking, etc. I don't want to get into it too much now because I want to ask you first before we go on. I mean, this is Photoshop World. This is a big event here in Vegas where there will be a whole slew of Adobe bigwigs because they can drive over almost. And there are always
and I'm looking forward. You and I have a couple of meetings with some of those folks. We're going
to get to see some secret stuff actually even before the keynote, but we can't tell you
Yes,
about it.
but we'll tell you about it as soon as we can.
But we'll tell you about it
as soon as we can.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as we can.
We can't ask for predictions,
Sure.
Rich. What do you predict
Sure.
will be something that we learn
Well,
at
one of the
Photoshop?
things that Adobe has
one of the
been
things
doing
that
that
Adobe
most
has been
people missed
doing
is this concept that they call Creative Cloud. Now, part of the reason why everyone misses it, that if you get outside of like the San Francisco area, nobody thinks that the word cloud computing is a good thing. In fact, this major technology company, Citrix, just did a study. They released like half of all people on the planet, like, you know, intelligent people, like, admitted that they didn't know what cloud computing was. And so here's the deal. Adobe Creative Cloud is simply Creative Suite plus some cloud services. So if you use YouSendIt or Dropbox or, you know, some of these other things that allow you to sync your stuff up to a remote location, SmugMug, and then pull it back down as a backup, that's what the cloud stuff is. Now, the coolest thing is, and this is what most people don't realize, is that when you have a cloud membership, you have purchased a subscription. So just like your iPhone or your Droid phone, when you have a subscription, they can give you software updates whenever they're available.
Right. And they're going to be available to Creative Cloud users before they're available to people that buy stuff in a box.
Yeah, so we just saw some new Creative Cloud features released for Illustrator that are from the next version of Illustrator. So if I were a betting man, I would bet that we are not too far away from seeing some new Photoshop features. And I mean, if you look at CS6, adaptive wide angle blows my mind away. The Blur Lab, there's some really cool stuff coming. They've been cranking it up into overdrive lately with the wacky science.
Without violating NDAs, because you can go to any website and see this, but you know, Photoshop CS7 is not far away.
Adobe has been relatively transparent, and if you look at their history, you typically see that it's a 12 to 16 month cycle. They're not going to commit to a date yet, because if you commit to a date and then you miss it and you're a publicly traded company,
then your stock goes down.
Then your stock goes down. And then people get mad at you. But if I were a betting man, a 12 to 16 month window is a reasonable window to expect a new version.
Where would that put us for CS7?
Somewhere between April and October of next year.
My guess is we're going to see some of the CS7 features debuted during the keynote by Adobe, because that's a past practice we've seen in the past.
Yes.
They've shown a few tidbits out of the next
like the thing they showed last year that I am starving for was that intelligent blur removal filter. Yeah. If you haven't seen that online, you look at that and you're just like, whoa. They take images and it like backwards does the math. It's like, oh, there was motion blur in this, and it like removes it.
It basically helps correct for poor focusing skills for some people, because a lot of out of focus images are the result of camera movement. Yes. And this detects camera movement and fixes it. But yeah, I suspect we're going to see some of that sort of thing at the keynote. Today on about 1:00 Pacific time, we're going to probably see some of that kind of stuff.
And people will be posting, camera phone videos and tweets. So start following. The hashtag for Photoshop World is just the hashtag symbol PSW. So if you can't come to Photoshop World and you follow that, that'll be a good source for information. And we'll be tweeting too.
I thought they were doing PSW 2012.
Maybe. PSW 12.
Oh. It's PSW 12. We neither one of us right, but our studio audience gets a prize. Okay, so we'll have all that stuff, and we're going to have live coverage from the floor. We're going to be doing, as you said, interviews. We're going to have a lot
of dead people, but
no
live
dead people, but live people. We're going to have all kinds of information for you. Whatever comes out, we're also going to be visiting with all the plug-in manufacturers during this 3-day period, Rich. So if there's any new stuff and any of our friends at various places like On One or Nick or Tiffin, we're going to have that out there for you.
I'll be actually giving some demos at the Tiffin booth and at the Wacom booth. Wacom, if you haven't seen it, not exactly a photo product, but something I really like. Have you tried their Inkling yet? Have you seen this thing?
I can't use the Wacom stuff.
This you could use. No. This isn't a mouse. This is a pen. And I like to write, I often find it better to step away from the computer and just sketch and write out my ideas. This captures your ideas into the pen.
I've seen that,
and then you come back and you sync, and you've got your drawings and your sketches digitally. No scanning.
Yeah, that's a little too weird for me. But you know, I mean,
It doesn't follow you into the bathroom, Scott.
well, you know, listen, there was that one time I presented at Photoshop World and I had to take a break and I didn't turn my mic off when I went into the bathroom, but that's another story.
Speaking of Photoshop World, what are you going to be talking about this week?
Well, you and I will both, by the time this show airs, we will probably just finish the Smug meeting. We're going to do a Smug meeting together where you're going to do some demos on Photoshop. Tom Shu's going to do some Lightroom stuff. I'm going to do a few things. Then I'm teaching Thursday. I believe it's at 10:45. I'm not sure, with Rod Harlan, and he and I are going to reprise what we did a few years ago, where we did sort of between the two of us, a forum on Twitter and social media for photographers, telling photographers how they can get the most out of it. So that's going to be on Thursday. I'll be speaking there, and then of course I'll be wandering around the show floor, sticking my head in various places down there.
Well, I'm going to step on a soapbox for a second because I got into another argument this morning with someone about Google Plus, and I like Google Plus. I still think Twitter is better for photographers. I think Google Plus is better for talking with other photographers and interacting, and maybe, you know, I think they have a nicer photo engine. But as far as what I use to keep in touch with clients and I use to engage with non-photography people who then hire us for work, I think Twitter's more vibrant.
I can pretty much assure you Google will never be a sponsor of this show
Because of that comment or because of you?
I think the numbers are inflated. Keep in mind, all the people who have
every time you sign up for a Gmail account, it's like, and convert to Plus. And every time you do anything, it's like, convert to Plus. It's like, I'm tired of these pop-up dialog boxes. Fine, convert to Plus. I never log in.
You don't no longer have a choice. If you get a Gmail account, a new one,
you have to take it.
Have a Plus account now.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like kind of saying like,
and now if I circle you as a friend, and then as somebody I'm following, and then you can make your own circles, like you can say photographers and put you in there. So it shows me on 3 times on you. So that counts as 3. So it says this person has been circled 5 million times. Well, 3 of them is just one person. And that's my problem with it. But most what I think Rod's going to do, because I know what I'm going to do, is I'm going to talk about Twitter. And Rod seems to get a lot of traction at Twitter. But we're going to cover all these topics. So come see my class. It's on Thursday. And what are you teaching? You're teaching like 91 things.
It's a busy week. I am doing a little workshop tomorrow on a couple of topics. I'll be speaking at SmugMug, and that'll be fun. And that's Wednesday. That's today. I don't know. This comes out on Wednesday.
That's right. This comes out on Wednesday.
So that'll be today. I'm speaking at SmugMug. And I've got a talk at the Adobe booth, a talk at Tiffin, and then I've got 3 official classes and 1 show floor class. So the show floor, I'll be talking about getting started in DSLR video, what you need to know, where to spend your money wisely, a couple of do's and don'ts, super practical advice. And then I got 3 classes, 1 on using Premiere Pro to edit video, 1 on using Photoshop to edit video, and then a class on color correcting video. I won't use the G word because you hate it. So making your video not suck.
Good. Well, by the way, it's still extraordinarily relevant, even though it's been out for a while. If you are interested in learning how to do DSLR video, the book to get is From Still to Motion. And I'm not just saying that because I wrote the foreword and there's some stuff in there about me. I'm saying it because Rich wrote it and he had some help from some great guys. And if you want to learn how to really take your camera to the next level, that is the book to get.
Okay, there is a beginner's book for those. A couple people said, wow, that book's just a little too pro for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think it was that pro.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, well, see, you subscribe like me, like, well, it's not a big deal to walk in with $15,000 of equipment on a shoot. You know, that's just normal.
Yeah, we got a pile that's sitting right next to us.
We did do a book called Creating DSLR Video in the Snapshots to Great Shots series, which is for the people who say, oh, I've got video on my camera, I'm going on vacation with the family, or I'm covering the kids' sporting events. And I attempted to help people who don't want to do video professionally, but do want their videos to not suck.
Well, then I was going to add that we'll have some more stuff on Photofocus. We're going to have some stuff that shows you how to use Photoshop.
Oh, yeah.
And just Photoshop.
To edit video.
And
we have one up there already.
Yeah, and it's good enough nowadays that you can actually do something with it. And I expect as we roll into CS7 that we'll see more of those features. I got another couple questions to ask you, Rich, but I also have to do a few more thank yous to our sponsors. I'm very happy to tell you that ViewBug is a sponsor of the Photofocus Show. ViewBug is the #1 place on the web to enter photo contests, and there happens to be a really big one there between Photofocus and ViewBug. Just search ViewBug Photofocus Contest. We're giving away more than $10,000 worth. That's right, 10K. Which is
actually it's 9K. I had a bad night at the Vegas tables.
Okay, $10,000 worth of stuff. So you want to
$9,000,
and there's a whole bunch more contests you can enter. So we really want to say thank you to viewbug.com because they make that all possible. And thanks to Borrow Lenses, you can rent lenses, cameras, lights, grip, video stuff, still stuff. It's for pretty much every brand. They have every lens in the world except the kit lenses that came with your camera. And they have some stuff you've probably never even heard of. So check out borrowlenses.com. All right, now, Rich, at the show, there's networking. There are hellacious parties. Some of the parties are legendary. There'll be the usual House of Blues party on, what is it, Wednesday night? I believe so. And there'll be
Scott Kelby actually plays in the band.
The In-N-Out Burger midnight visit is mandatory for Scott, I know, every year.
I don't know if that's public knowledge.
It's pretty much public knowledge because he started tweeting it the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
There's a tweet up. There's one of the things I like best about this show is actually the show floor. I have been to every photo conference on this planet of any note. And this is not a photo conference. This is a Photoshop conference. But
it's photography, too.
It's become very photocentric in the last few years. Years and years ago, it was mostly design.
What's nice is that because the show has such a high quality of attendee, and they go out of their way in the conference to make sure that there's breaks in the conference presentation, what's nice is that the show floor is open like 5 or 6 hours a day. It's always jammed and hopping, and at the same time, it's not so full that you can't walk up. Like, I have discovered just gems of equipment.
The stuff you'll learn, the people you'll meet the people that are writing the books on Photoshop. You'll meet the people that are leading conferences and classes. And I'll tell you, the other thing is, nobody runs a conference as well as Kelby Media. They just do it all top shelf, top drawer.
Well, there's two things that stand out. I go to a lot of conferences, both attending and speaking. And there's two things that they do at Photoshop World that I have never seen before. Thing one is they don't just hire some event company and pull in senior citizens off the street to run the booth. Oh, do you need a lanyard? They actually bring their whole staff out. It's their staff. Now, I probably just offended a handful of artists. My point being is that you go to a conference and almost everybody who's working are retired folks who just get hired at crap minimum wage to come in. They know nothing about the conference, and these conference organizers cheap out. Kelby Training shuts down their office, brings out the people who lay out the magazines, lay out the books, answer the phones, and they say, oh, we want our staff to meet our customers face to face so they know who they're working for.
And they're everywhere, and they're standing around wearing T-shirts saying, I can help.
Yeah, which is really cool. The other thing that's nice is that as an instructor, they don't say, oh, well, you're speaking on Tuesday, so we'll fly you in on Monday night. They say, come out for the whole week. And when you're not teaching, could you please attend these social functions? Could you please be visible on the floor? And they encourage people to just, come up and talk and chat and get to know each other.
Yeah, if you've never had a chance to meet Rich Harrington, boy,
Except in the bathroom.
You're missing out. But yeah, I do. Now, you will note that Rich and I both have a new feature this year at Photoshop World. When we're in the men's bathroom, we have a plastic arm that reaches around behind our back that you can shake hands with because the real one is busy. So
it sounds like I'm being gross or joking here. I'm actually being serious. I have had to almost every year explain. I will answer any Photoshop question unless I'm in my hotel room, I am at a dinner table, or I am in the bathroom.
Yeah, leave us alone in the bathroom, please.
If you want to go get a drink, you get 5 Photoshop questions for each drink. If it's a good drink, I'll go to 7.
Well, and Scott himself is around. He's affable. He's accessible. The guys, Matt Klaskowski, RC, everybody's there. So you want, we're excited. You can probably hear the excitement in our voice because for us, even though we're on the faculty, this is still as much fun for us on the faculty as it is if you're an attendee.
Oh, I take classes.
Yeah, I plan to sit on. Hello, I plan to sit on all the Lightroom stuff I can because I still have a lot to learn, and I've got Lightroom books sitting here in front of me. I've got to make up for 6 years of aperture expertise in about 6 months.
So are you going to put sunglasses on and wear a different hat, or?
No, everybody knows I made the change. I've come out. I'm a Lightroom user. I've made the switch, so I'm batting for the other team.
I think somebody in Cupertino finally heard us that maybe, yeah. And to put this straight, because like some people are, it's like, Scott and I both used Aperture for a long, long time. I wrote actually the official Apple training book on it for one of the versions. I love the product. I still use lots of Apple products. I'm very happy with many of the things they're doing, but I just can't deal with a software app that I don't know when the next version's coming out, if it's going to support the cameras I need.
I'm getting hate mail and death threats because I switched. So,
well, I mean, because when you switched, that meant that all those people still using Aperture had to also switch because you obviously control their computers.
I don't. And I don't, I don't like some of the direction Apple's taken recently, and I've been vocal about it. But we're still sitting here, and I'm still recording this into a big, beautiful iMac, and I've got a big, brand new, I got everything in this place.
The short version is for those of you who think that Scott suddenly hates Aperture or Rich is suddenly down on Apple. No. You often feel the strongest negative feelings to the ones you love the most.
Yeah. I mean, I did Aperture training titles at lynda.com and at creativelive.com. I mean, I've given 200.
And hey, here's the good news. My training that's on Aperture, that's over at Kelby Train, it's still perfectly current because they haven't updated the damn thing in years.
Yeah. You want to use Aperture and you still want to learn from us, you can. The point being is I'm mentioning all this and the 400,000 images I have in Aperture because it was not an easy decision for me to make. It was one I did not want to make. It was one I fought making. It's the kind of decision you make when you're about to like break up with your best girlfriend or whatever because you hate to do it. But I had no other choice. When I started looking at the image quality, I mean, my job is to make images. I get paid for that. That's how I make my living. Yeah, I do this Photofocus show, but I'm still a photographer. I've always been a photographer. And if I can get better image quality out of another program, I can't just because I play on the other team say, well, I'm going to ignore that. So it was not an easy switch. I'm looking forward to learning more about Lightroom. But I do have to admit, it has been a tough learning curve because I'm so Aperture ingrained and have every keyboard shortcut in the world memorized for Aperture. And then I go to do something in Lightroom and I forget. And I'm like, oops, I just deleted 7,000 files with that shortcut.
It's not that bad. But actually, for those of you out there who are sitting on the fence wondering, should I try it or what should I do? Two quick pieces of advice. One is download a 30-day trial. You can download it. You could
download both of them for free.
Yeah, put it in there, play with it, see how it works, see what you think. I don't think Aperture has a trial anymore.
Yeah,
but Lightroom is actually part of the Creative Cloud now.
Yeah, now that's what I want to ask. What does it cost if you're a virgin? You just walking into Creative Cloud for the first time. Do you know what it costs?
It is $49 a month with a 1-year subscription.
Now wait a minute. You're telling me
$600
$50 a month. I get access to Photoshop, I get access to Lightroom, I get access to Premiere,
After Effects. You get
AC,
online backup.
all that stuff.
Yeah, you get every Adobe software app that's there, including something that you
pay $49 a month in advance.
It's a monthly subscription. They bill you. And here's the thing: before you sign up for that 1-year subscription, do the 1-month trial.
And then you get 11 months.
Then you get 13 months for the price of 12.
13 months. Yeah. Listen. If you're worried about this thing, don't be because it's really particularly for Mac people.
And if you're an existing customer, it's $29 a month for the first year.
They've extended that longer than it was going to be.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they just announced yesterday that they're going to extend that. If you have the App Store, for instance, and you know how you get a new Mac and it goes, oh, you haven't downloaded Pages and you haven't downloaded iTunes. Well, it sort of works the same way. If you've got a cloud subscription to the Adobe products, it knows that you're cool and lets you use it.
And they put Lightroom in there saying if you need Lightroom, just click here to download. So it's included.
You can choose what you want to download.
And one incredibly unique feature that's super helpful for me is that you get a cross-platform subscription. So if you're using a Mac or a PC, you get 2 activations. Now, you're not supposed to run 2 at the same time, but 1 for your home computer, 1 for your mobile computer.
Last note before we close out the podcast. Do activate before you go on a trip.
Yes. Yeah, a couple of listeners said, we're having problems. There's also, for those of you that are on the Mac and you recently upgraded to Mountain Lion, the default save state for almost every app is iCloud.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, Apple kept having problems with iCloud.
Yeah, you want to save your desktop.
Or your drive.
Something.
Yes.
Yeah.
A local machine.
Save locally, ignore that stuff. But anyway, do activate before you go anywhere, because if you can't get on Wi-Fi, you're in trouble. We're about to go out on the show floor and look at cool things and wish you were here. But we will be back. We're here the 5th, 15th, and the 25th of every month. And, it's really fun being at Photoshop World, Rich.
Yeah, it's a great time. And if any of our listeners who are getting this show or others, feel free to track us down on the show floor. Be happy to catch up.
Yeah, say hi. Buy us a drink. Just leave us alone in the bathroom.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Photofocus. We'll see you in about 10 more days.